Chapter 1. Domestic Disasters. 1. Home Alone. As soap is to the body, so laughter is to the soul. Yiddish saying. After my husband left for work, I put our dogs outside and began my morning chores. I stopped mid-chores to use the bathroom. Although I was alone in our home, I closed the bathroom door out of habit. I switched on the ventilation fan and made a mental note to have it looked at because it was making such a loud, rattling sound. Despite the old fan's noise, I suddenly heard a loud thud against the bathroom door. It startled me to attention. Then it thudded against the door again. I knew I had put the dogs out, and I was almost positive I had locked the front door. We lived in the woods, so I thought it could be an animal. Could a bear have gotten in through the sliding door in the back? Or worse, could it be a 2-footed intruder? Before I could logically consider my own questions, the door was hit for a third time. I was truly frightened. I watched a distinct shadow slowly pass by, visible through the little bit of space at the bottom of the door. There definitely was something out there, banging on my unlocked bathroom door trying to get in. I moved to the door and quietly depressed the button on the flimsy lock. It wasn't much protection, but maybe it could buy me some time. I strained to hear any clue as to the intruder's whereabouts, but the noisy ventilation fan made that impossible. I thought about shutting off the fan to hear better, but I ruled that out because it might signal to the intruder that someone was in the bathroom. I felt raw fear. I had no exit but through that bathroom door. I had to think clearly, but I was panicking. I told myself to slow down and think this through. Our dogs hadn't barked, and normally they would alert us to an intruder. But maybe the rattling fan kept me from hearing their warning. After all, I had clearly seen that shadow. I rested my ear against the door but heard nothing. I needed a plan of action. I looked about the bathroom for something I could use as a weapon, but was frustrated immediately by my limited choices. I remembered a metal alligator-type hair clip in the top drawer. It was strong, long, and tapered almost to a point at its end. Grasping it like a dagger, I raised it high in the air, testing its feel. I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked like a desperate woman arming herself as best she could, but a woman who knew she was no match for a bigger intruder. I wanted to cry, but there was no time. I was tempted to make a mad dash for my cell phone, left in its charger in an adjacent room, but I had no idea what waited for me beyond that door. Did I dare risk a confrontation I probably couldn't win? Maybe the intruder was just waiting for me to make a break for it. Besides, even if I reached the phone first, I live in the country. It would take time for any help to reach me. I decided I should stay put and not force an immediate encounter. Finally, I couldn't stand it. I needed to know where the intruder was. I let 5 more silent minutes pass, and then I quietly unlocked the door. With my makeshift hair clip dagger held high, I opened the bathroom door a crack and peered out. I saw nothing unusual. But I hadn't imagined that moving shadow. It was real. Then, I looked down and saw the intruder who had banged on the door. My trusty robot vacuum cleaner, now silenced and still, having turned itself off after it got stuck under a chair. Jennifer Clark Veal.
2. In the kitchen with the knife, no clue. A recipe has no soul. You as the cook must bring soul to the recipe. Thomas Keller. Several years ago, my wife and I were enjoying one of our favorite dishes, beef burgundy, or bœuf bourguignon if we really want to sound fancy. As I reached for a second helping, My wife looked across the table and said, "You know, you could make this. It's really easy. The recipe is in my notebook." It sounded like a dare to me. A month or two later, I got home from work early and decided to give it a try. Sure enough, I found her handwritten beef burgundy recipe right where she said it would be. I started gathering the ingredients she had listed: 2 pounds of stew meat, some mushroom soup, 2 cups of sliced carrots, 8 ounces of mushrooms, a can of red wine. Wait a minute. A can of wine? I'll be the first to admit that I've had trouble in the past searching for items in the grocery store, not knowing whether I was looking for a jar or a box or a bottle or a carton. Where do they teach that kind of stuff anyway? I knew one could buy wine in a box, but I had never heard of wine available in cans. And was there something special about canned wine over bottled wine? Baffled, I decided to get on with my task and postpone that ingredient until later. When my wife finished her workday, she called to say she was on her way home. I told her about my quest to cook dinner, but that I had a question. "What size can of wine do you use for the beef burgundy?" There was a pause on the other end. Then, in a puzzled voice, she asked, "What are you talking about?" "You specify a can of wine in your recipe," I pointed out. "Oh, right," she said matter-of-factly. "After you scoop the mushroom soup out of its can, pour some red wine into the can, and that's how much you'll need." Perhaps I'm too literal, and I'm sure a can of wine made sense to her when she wrote down the recipe long ago, but I'm convinced that something got lost in the translation. In fact, a lot gets lost in translation when it comes to this husband's talent in the kitchen. An example is this real-life conversation. "Nick, would you grab a 13x9 pan from under the counter?" my wife asks. Immediately, I open up a drawer. "What are you doing?" she demands. "I said it's under the counter." "I'm getting the tape measure." "I don't need the tape measure." "But I need it to see which pan is 13 inches by 9, I say. "No, you don't," she says. "You just tell by looking at it." So I open the cabinet and pull out a pan. "Is this it?" My wife looks at me as if I was born on Mars. "Never mind, I'll get it," she sighs. After other failures such as this, I wanted to prove that I could be creative in the kitchen, so I decided to prepare something new for dinner one evening. I was home all day while my wife was at work, and I looked through a cookbook and found what appeared to be a tasty recipe for shrimp linguine. I jotted down the ingredients and took the list to the supermarket. I had no trouble finding the shrimp and the pasta, but some of the other ingredients proved more elusive. Finally, I found a store clerk and asked him, "Are you out of roasted red peppers? I've been all over the produce section and can't find them." "Roasted red peppers aren't in the produce section," he told me. "Try aisle 8. On aisle 8, I found cans of green chili peppers, cans of chipotle peppers, cans of sweet corn with peppers, but no cans of roasted red peppers. "They usually don't come in a can," the clerk told me after I found him again. "They come in a jar." Seriously, does anybody know where I can sign up for that what comes in a jar, what comes in a box, what comes in a bottle, and what comes in a carton class? After I discovered that, yes, roasted red peppers do come in a jar, I looked at my list again and read 3 cloves of garlic. I had seen the garlic in the produce section, so I returned and found an abundance of lovely white garlic heads. I chose 3 of the best and put them in a bag. Once home, I followed the recipe carefully. It told me to finely chop the 3 cloves of garlic and saute them in butter. I chopped up one of the heads and tossed it into the pan. As it sizzled, the kitchen filled with the definitive and pungent aroma. "That's a lot of garlic," I thought. 3 of these might be more than we really need. So I put away the other 2 heads of garlic and moved on. By the time my wife got home, I had set the dining room table with our best china and lit the candles. The shrimp linguine was ready. We sat down and dug in. As she readied to take her second bite, my wife paused and asked, "Where did you get this recipe? It's pretty heavy on the garlic." "And get this," I told her, "I put in only a third of what the recipe called for. It actually specified 3 cloves, but I think that would be way too much." I couldn't hide the pride I felt in my ability to modify a recipe on the fly. She looked at me suspiciously. "Did you save the cloves you didn't use?" she asked. "Yes." "Can I see them?" I went to the kitchen, fetched the other 2 heads of garlic, and presented them to her. "These are the other 2 cloves of garlic?" she giggled. "Yes," I said, though I didn't see what was so funny. "What's the big deal?" "Nothing that can't wait," she said softly. "Sit down and let's finish this wonderful meal." Nick Walker.
3. H is for humor. If you would not be laughed at, be the first to laugh at yourself. Benjamin Franklin. It was almost midnight and my husband was sound asleep, tired to the bone. With the weekend's back-to-back thunderstorms, Jeff had already worked 30 hours of overtime to help restore power and might be called out again. So I tiptoed past him to the bathroom, just 5 feet from his side of the bed. I was exhausted too. And sad. We had moved recently and missed being a part of our military community. As I squeezed the toothpaste onto my brush, I thought about our friends back in Texas. About 2 seconds into brushing my teeth, I realized something was fishy. I mean, it smelled fishy. The natural toothpaste I use does have a weird smell and a unique taste, but this was weirder than usual. Looking at the lack of foam on my brush, I sniffed it, shrugged, added water, and continued brushing. There were still no bubbles, so I leaned toward the mirror to look at my teeth. The white stuff I saw was a little too pasty and a tad too white. I looked into my toiletry basket sitting on the sink. There, right next to my toothpaste, sat a long-forgotten tube of Preparation H. At first, I felt foolish and thought it was a stupid thing to do. But as I took a closer look at the ointment snuggled nice and tight between my teeth, I thought, oh dear, this can't be good. Will my gums shrink and make my teeth fall out? I felt the giggles coming and managed to stop them. I rinsed out my mouth over and over and wiped my gums with a washcloth. Then I rebrushed my still intact teeth with toothpaste. As I crawled into bed next to Jeff, those giggles bubbled up again. Trying to hold them in only made the bed jiggle, and I snorted, which jolted him awake. What in the world? What's so funny? Now, with permission to let loose, it took a minute to contain myself. I brushed my teeth. Jeff was already laughing. With Preparation H. With what? Do you think my teeth will fall out? We laughed until we were wrung out. Like kids at a slumber party, we breathed deeply to calm ourselves. Okay, for real, we gotta get some sleep. And then one of us would snicker and start it all over again. Good, cleansing belly laughs with the works, snot, tears, and tissues. Eventually, we fell asleep and woke up feeling lighter. I tried to remember the last time we had laughed like that. Somewhere in the stress of missing our friends and adjusting to new jobs and a new home, we let too much seriousness sneak into our days. Everyday irritants and busyness pressed in and squeezed out life's funny side. That laughter was just the medicine we needed. Robin K. Melvin. 4. Stuck in the ceiling. A well-balanced person is one who finds both sides of an issue laughable. Herbert Prochnow. The annoying, intermittent chirps began at 4 a.m. I woke on the second shrill beep and saw the blinking red light of the smoke detector on the ceiling over my head. Half asleep, my husband and I shuffled to the guest room to catch a few more hours of shut-eye. Over breakfast, my husband George announced he was going to change the battery himself. I'm cheap. I'm not going to pay someone to do a job that I can do. It'll be easy peasy. Easy peasy my foot, George. That smoke detector is 18 feet above our bedroom floor. You'll break your neck if you fall. I got this, he said smugly. At 10 a.m., against my better judgment, I steadied a 12-foot ladder as George stood on the top rung. He threw his left leg over the ornate crown molding of the tray ceiling and crawled onto the narrow deck. Standing up, he stretched as far as possible to reach the still chirping smoke detector. This certainly was not a place I wanted my 75-year-old husband, but in no time at all, George had removed the dead battery and installed the new one. I sighed in relief. Now he could come down. Kneeling on the fuzzy bathroom rug I'd tossed up to him, George attempted to get one leg over the bulky trim to reach the first step. He missed. I directed him to move left and then right, but nothing worked. After several attempts, George lay prone on the deck of the tray ceiling with one arm dramatically draped over the crown molding. I couldn't hide my concern. Now what? Go get the guys working on the neighbors' gutters and have them bring their extension ladder. George, they're being paid to clean out his gutters. I walked out of the room with a feeling of panic rising in my chest. At that point, I had no choice but to call our local fire department. I explained our emergency. As soon as I hung up the phone, our daughter Margie called to check on us. When I explained that her dad was stuck in the tray ceiling, she said, "I'll be right there." I returned to the bedroom to inform George that I'd called the fire department and was going outside to wait for them. "Really?" he said plaintively, lifting his sweaty head from his forearm. "You really called the fire department?" "Yes, I did," I said on my way out of the room. "I'll be in the garage waiting for them to get here." 10 minutes later, Margie pulled into the driveway and hopped out of her car. She ran toward me. "Where's Dad?" "In the bedroom, right where I left him, stuck in the tray ceiling. Why don't you go keep him company until the firefighters get here?" 5 minutes later, a white pickup truck turned into our driveway. I thought, oh good, a firefighter is here. The truck door opened, and Margie's pastor jumped out. "Pastor Nate, what are you doing here?" "Margie called me. She said something about George being stuck somewhere." "Yes, he is. Follow me. We could use a prayer right now." I returned to watch for the firemen and was rewarded with the sight of a massive red fire rescue vehicle parking in front of my home. "I understand you have a situation," said one of 3 firemen. "You could say that." I looked at their name tags. Brandon, Jonathan, and Marty. My husband is stuck in the tray ceiling. They tried not to grin. "Follow me," I instructed. The bedroom was officially crowded as 6 pairs of eyes looked up at my red-faced husband peering over the edge of the crown molding. Marty addressed George. "Hello, sir. Do you think if I guide your left foot to the top rung that you can swing your other leg over to stand on the ladder?" "Yes, I can," George responded. "You guys didn't really need to come." "We were in the neighborhood," Jonathan lied. Marty said, "Sir, put your leg over the edge. I'm going to grab your ankle and guide your foot to the ladder. Are you okay with that?" "Yes," George confirmed. A shaky leg appeared over the top of the molding as George scooted closer to the edge. The rescue began. When both his feet were firmly on the floor, George shook hands with each of the firemen. Jonathan turned to him and said, "You don't need to change batteries anymore." George said, "Why is that?" "We do it free of charge," said Brandon. George nodded. "Free is good." Nancy Emick Pankow. 5. Amish Friendship Bread. Bread for myself is a material question. Bread for my neighbor is a spiritual one. Nikolai Berdyev. It all started when a friend paid me a surprise visit. She knocked frantically on the door. I found her standing on the porch, teary-eyed, and holding a Tupperware bowl in one hand and a wooden spoon in the other. Her bottom lip trembled as she spoke. "No matter how many times I give it away, it just keeps coming back. Take it." Cautiously, I lifted the container from her hands. I whispered, "What is it?" "It's Amish friendship bread, like a special cake mix." This stuff didn't look like any cake mix I'd ever seen. It didn't even come in a box. "Listen," she continued, "this stuff has a mind of its own. You have to follow the rules." Cake rules? My friend was babbling like she'd had one too many Chardonnays. "Keep it comfortable, room temperature is best, and don't put the lid on too tight or it will blow its top. Now for the first 5 days you have to stir it, but never with a metal spoon. It hates that." She thrust the wooden spoon at me. "Never forget to stir it or it gets angry and tries to escape. On day 5, add 1 cup each of milk, flour, and sugar, then continue the stirrings for another 4 days." I grabbed a pen and scribbled her instructions. I couldn't remember the passcode to my Wi-Fi. How could I be trusted with a bowl full of neurotic cake batter? "On day 10, feed it again. Scoop out 1 cup of batter for yourself. Here's a recipe for bread. Then divide the rest equally into 3 containers and give it to your friends. But don't bring me any. I won't be home." As she ran to her car, she hollered over her shoulder, "Don't forget to stir it every day." I lifted the lid and sniffed the batter. Ick. My son's wet gym socks didn't smell this bad. Gagging, I snapped it shut and sat it behind the toaster. How hard could this be? I thought. I Googled Amish friendship bread and found entire websites dedicated to the stuff, which I find ironic as I assume that Amish bakers likely do not spend much time on the internet. The online recipes and instructions were just as my friend had advised. On day 2, as I dropped bread into the toaster, I was reminded of my friend's parting words. The lid had ruptured, and the mass, triple in size, flowed from the confines of its Tupperware prison. Smelly globs bubbled on the countertop. Using the designated wooden spoon, I scooped it back into the bowl and gave it a vigorous stir. For days, I approached my brew with caution and spoke softly, hoping it didn't sense my apprehension. On day 5, I fed it, gently stirring in the milk, flour, and sugar. That night, I woke with a start, sensing something wasn't right. I tiptoed down the hall to find that my smelly countertop companion had grown to enormous proportions and was attempting its escape. It crept wildly over the sides of the container and appeared to be moving toward the front door. I spent the rest of the night scooping and wiping. By morning, I had it contained in an ice cream bucket. Over the next 72 hours, I didn't leave the house, suspecting the creature would be oozing from the windows upon my return. I found myself running to the kitchen hourly to stir it. I didn't dare let in the cat for fear he would be consumed. I was up at daybreak on day 10, eager to feed the monster and give it away. I added the necessary ingredients, scooped out just enough to bake the bread, and then divided the rest into 3 containers. Within minutes, I was on the road, in search of a few unsuspecting friends. I made 3 deliveries and then raced home to reclaim my kitchen. As I pulled into the driveway, I spotted a dish sitting outside my front door. I approached it cautiously. When I saw the wooden spoon, my fears were confirmed. It was accompanied by a note. "I offer you this starter batch of Amish friendship bread. Enjoy." It was signed simply, "Your friend." I didn't know who the culprit was, but I was pretty sure she wasn't Amish. And sure as sourdough, she was not my friend. Anne Morrow. 6. Tuna Delight. But some secrets are too delicious not to share. Suzanne Collins, Mockingjay. Early in our marriage, we had what we call our poor years. First, we were paying off our college debts and the mortgage on the little farm we bought. Then came the kids, and we were always saving up for new shoes, a station wagon, school supplies, and winter coats. We had a lot of spaghetti and mystery stews during those years. Our 4 kids were hearty, active, outdoorsy, and busy kids with appetites to match. Luckily, I had taught our oldest child the fine art of making sandwiches, so he could make an afternoon snack for himself and the other kids when he got home from school. Our son was proud of his new skill at preparing lunch. One Saturday afternoon, when all of us were coming in from working in our massive garden, he volunteered to start fixin', while I helped the younger ones wash up. Most of us were content with PB&J sandwiches, but Dad wanted his favorite tuna salad. I wasn't sure we had any canned tuna in our cupboard, but our son said he had found 2 cans on the bottom, plenty enough for sandwiches for his dad. I offered to help him, but he wanted to make them all himself. While we readied for the meal, cleared away ongoing homework, and set the table, our son put together a meal worthy of a mass of farm hands, a mountain of PB&J sandwiches for me and the kids, and a plate of tuna salad sandwiches for Dad. He had even found a bag of chips to accompany the meal, as well as a gallon of sun tea. We ate like the starving farmhands we were. Dad complimented our son on the perfection of the tuna sandwiches and finished every one. Later, while we cleared away the mess and prepared for our afternoon, nap time for the baby, laundry for me, and a garage project for Dad, he stopped to compliment our son again. "Best ever," he added, bending low. "Even better than Mom makes." He also bragged about the amazing sandwiches to his brother later that day. During a rare, quiet moment that afternoon, I went to the kitchen for a glass of sun tea and a handful of the few remaining potato chips. The bag was down to broken fragments, so when I finished them off, I stuffed the empty bag into the trash bin. That's when I found 2 empty cans of 9 Lives tuna-flavored cat food in the trash. I nearly choked on my tea as I sat and laughed out loud. I've never told a soul that delicious secret until this very moment. Nancy Lee Davis. 7. Holly and Mistletoe. I love being married. It's so great to find one special person you want to annoy for the rest of your life. Rita Rudner. I sang at the top of my voice as I danced into our lovely pastel bedroom to pick out a chic, flattering outfit for the night's festivities. I'm gonna shake, rattle, and roll. Yes, shake, rattle, and roll. Every Saturday night, 10 of us would go out for a sumptuous dinner followed by dancing. We had a marvelous time de-stressing from the obligations of being parents. We exercised our bodies, bared our souls, and had the time of our lives. As I fumbled through my clothes, prying the hangers from one another and de-squashing one dress from another, I swore under my breath. I really need my own closet, a place where my dresses can breathe, my slacks can stay creased, and my blouses won't have to share hangers with my skirts. Rob didn't have that many clothes, but his were bigger and took up half of the closet. With our 4 children in the house, there was no way I could use the closets in the other rooms either. I hate wrinkles. Why do I even bother ironing when I'm just going to cram them into a crowded cubbyhole? I ranted. There has to be a better way. And then it hit me. We had a perfectly good linen closet just outside our bedroom door. Those sheets and pillowcases could easily be stored in my mom's cedar chest. It was near empty with only the kids' christening gown wrapped up in a blue tissue paper. What a brilliant mind I have, I told myself. I raced to our barn to find 2 steel rods that would house Rob's shirts on the upper level and his pants on the lower level. I came in with several lengths until I found 2 that would work. With a hammer in hand, I busted out the shelves. With this funny-shaped tool, I carved a hole in each piece of board that I nailed to the wall. I smashed the steel rods into those holes. It was a little primitive, I must admit, but it did the trick. I was extremely proud of myself as I color-coordinated all Rob's pants and shirts and lined them up with the hangers all facing the same direction. He was going to be so surprised. My clothes were so happy. My flared skirts flared again, my dresses spread out, my blouses had elbow room, and my slacks stayed creased. Tears burned my eyes as I gazed at my spacious, organized closet. No more wrinkles for moi. Rob came in from work, late as usual. "Hurry, honey, they'll be here any minute. Now jump in the shower." Rob took his 5-minute shower and sprinted to the bedroom as I answered the door. "Come in, Gail and Larry, and have a seat. How are you doing, Roy and Joyce? What would you like to drink, Romeo and Patricia? Rob's running late as usual. He should be ready any minute." "Barb, where are my clothes?" came Rob's plea from the bedroom. "Oh, yeah, honey, they're in the hall closet. I was planning to surprise you." "The what?" "The old linen closet. It is now all yours to enjoy." I chuckled. I should mention that the back wall of our living room is totally mirrored. It reflects the upstairs and really makes the whole house look larger. Rob opened the bedroom door with his towel around his waist. He reached up to get down a shirt, and all 6 people sitting in the living room got a bird's-eye view of holly and mistletoe. And it wasn't Christmas, if you know what I mean. Their laughter shook the house. "Barb!" Rob bellowed. It took him a few minutes to compose himself enough to make his blushing entrance. Bright and early on Monday morning, Todd, our local cabinet maker, was busy rebuilding our linen closet. Rob's clothes are back in our closet where he thinks they belong, and I've made my peace with wrinkles. Barbara Bondi Pear. 8. Dieting disasters. It is bad to suppress laughter. It goes back down and spreads to your hips. Fred Allen. I decided to diet. Again. Like an addict flushing pills or dumping alcohol, I purged my kitchen cabinets and refrigerator of all temptations. I couldn't be trusted around cookies and candy. An unopened bag of chocolate-covered graham crackers made me pause. How could I trash all those delicious cookies? But they had to be banished. My willpower, or lack of, was no match for chocolate-covered anything. Julie, a friend and fellow teacher, loved those cookies too. Ah, that was the answer. I'd surprise her with a treat for lunch at school. Early the next morning, before I got ready for work, I put the cookies into a brown paper bag, folded the top, and left it on the kitchen counter. Later, I threw my tote bag over my shoulder, grabbed the bag, and kissed my husband Ed goodbye. Julie and I didn't share the same lunch period, so I sent one of my students to give her a note. "Please stop by my room before your lunch." I couldn't wait to see the expression on her face. During the class change, Julie popped through the door. "Hey, what's up? Come on in." I reached behind my back into my tote and produced the paper bag with a grand flourish. Ta-da! Julie took the bag, tilted her head, and furrowed her brows. "What's this?" "A surprise. Open it. You'll see." She opened it, pulled out a paper towel and a Ziploc full of potato chips. My jaw dropped. Next, she took out a sandwich and an apple. She placed the food along the edge of my desk. Wrinkling her forehead, Julie looked at it. That didn't make sense. I shook my head. Where did that come from? "What do you mean?" She lifted her hands and shrugged. "You brought it." "No, I didn't. I brought you a bag of chocolate cookies." She held up the apple. "Well, what's this? And where are my cookies?" "Oh, no." I plopped into my chair. "What?" "That's Ed's." He packs his lunch every day. I must have picked up the wrong bag. Uh-oh. She laughed and stuffed everything back into the bag except the potato chips. Well, gotta go. Thanks for lunch. Munching on a chip, she breezed out the door. I rarely called Ed at work, but I phoned his office on my lunch break. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Oh, nothing really. Have you had lunch yet?" "Yeah, but I had to go out to get some fast food. Some moron played a trick on me and swapped my lunch with a stupid bag of cookies. What a jerk." "You didn't want to eat the cookies?" "What, cookies for lunch? No way." I took a breath and closed my eyes. Confession time. It's my fault. I took the wrong bag. I wanted to give those cookies to Julie. I'm so sorry. You've got to be kidding. I asked everyone in this office which wise guy switched the bags. You really thought one of them ate your lunch? What else could I think? I'm sorry. Just tell them your crazy wife was the culprit. Yeah, right. The next day, I took Julie the contraband cookies, minus a couple. Several days of dieting later, I was dressing for work. My slacks were so loose around the waist that they wouldn't stay up. I'd never worn a belt. I hadn't needed one. But that day, I had to search for one to hold up my corduroy pants. How wonderful, I thought. I must have lost a lot of weight. So fast, too. Good thing I got rid of those cookies. During the first class change, I headed to the bathroom. I unhooked the belt and pulled down my pants. Something about them seemed strange. I noticed the label. Waist 36, length 32. What on earth? They weren't my pants. They were Ed's. We both wore khaki-colored corduroys. After doing laundry, I must have hung his in my closet. Good grief. I'd done it again. That night, I told Ed about my latest misadventure. He just shook his head and rolled his eyes. I don't know about you. First my lunch, now my pants. If I hadn't been on that dumb diet, I would never have thought those slacks were mine. I paused. Hey, if you start missing your underwear, we're really in trouble. I laughed. Ed didn't. No more ridiculous diets for me. Linda Carroll Cobb.